Hi, it's Laura Testa. I'm back. Thank you so much for joining me again. So in video one, we laid the watercolor down for this figure. Now I'm taking a chisel tipped marker. You can see it activated at the left. You can see that little square tip gives me the chisel, very much like the design markers we often use in the studio. And I'm doing that to lay down the color for her hair. Between the last video and this one, I also used that same marker to color in the bikini. I used royal blue, and then I added a blacker version of the royal blue to add all the shadows in. Because if you don't shade, then it's going to look very flat. But the shadows on the bathing suit are making it 3D. So with the hair here, I'm starting flat. And then I'll probably go back and make, some areas darker and some lighter. The chisel tip marker is actually really aggravating if you're a perfectionist who wants to have a lot of control over corners and stuff because of that chisel, that like square tip. But that's the beauty of it as well. Having that chisel gives you less control, but that can also lead to a really strong stylization. Another stylization that's going on here, I used before we got to this video. You can see where I used a super fine pen for all her fingers, the outline of her body, and her cell phone. Yeah, so now I am selecting. I have to remember what I was doing right here. What else does she need? I'm picking up more black line, more blue. Let's see. Brush pen in black. Okay, so I'm going for more definition. Now here's a really interesting thought. Because the hair got really bold and black, and because we have this bright, bold bikini with black, what happened was those lines and shapes became so dominating on the page that we really have to go back and turn up the volume on the contours of her body. And that's a personal choice. But, I kind of felt like I got so heavy handed in those areas that it's time to amp up the other areas. So I got a thicker line. Then I switched over to watercolor. What I'm doing is, actually, I think I tested the watercolor. Yeah, and then I said, and I went back to a chisel tip marker so that I can make the shoes match her bikini. So beautiful, beautiful part of sketching digitally like this is that if you try watercolor and decide, don't like it, you can switch to marker. Here I'm undoing what I tried because I didn't like the chisel tip was making really wonky shapes. So in order to get more control, I decided to work with a smaller chisel tip. So same color, same marker, but I actually changed the point size to be smaller so I could get the finer detail on the shape of her shoes. And notice how balanced it becomes to have color and shadow on her feet from head to toe, So it's a really good reminder to always work the whole drawing. When you've worked in one area, go to the other end, head to toe, toe to head. Try to get some balance up and down the page. What else are we doing here? Yeah. So I wanted to put the gold buttons. I can't use a marker to put gold buttons on this bathing suit because the marker tool is sheer. Even if you amp up the opacity on it, because it's a marker by designation, it's sheer. So this crayon tool, I think of it as like an oil pastel. It's waxy. I mean, it's digital, but it's very opaque. So I used that to do the gold buttons, and they really pop off the suit. They also give this like nautical sailor motif. Now I'm looking at different brushes. I went from my brush pen, and then I said, nah, I went to my watercolor brush. Selected my color and started adding shadow, more shadow, to the legs. Doing a little test there, testing on the size of the brush I want to use, testing out the tone. Am I still testing? Okay, here we go. Yeah. So it's a darker. You see how it's darker? But it's too big, so I'm going to bring the size down. I don't know what happened there. But you know, it's okay because it's digital. So I hope this kind of opens you up to the fact that you can really play around once you get digital, trying things, undoing the things you don't like, trying again. In this particular app, I can either undo by pushing a backwards looking button, but my favorite way to undo in most apps is to just swipe 2 fingers to the left, and that very easily just undoes anything I've done. Now you see I just did shadow on her arm, on her leg, and I always tell my students to shade like half of everything, because the fact is when your shapes when your shadows are shapes instead of skinny little lines, and when they are really present, you're going to get much more 3D feeling than if you're just basically drawing little tiny skinny squiggles. Like, thing is, it's frightening, I guess, is the best word. You know, people are afraid to ruin their drawing. But the thing is, until you've done it, you won't get to see the benefit. Here I shaded under her chin, a little bit on her forehead. And this is something I sketched from looking at a photo. So I'm taking a lot of clues from the actual photo to know where I want to put shadows, for sure. So drawing from photos that you're looking at is going to be the single best way to build your vocabulary for a good long time. So that when you're drawing freehand by yourself, it's like the shadows start to flow automatically from your mind. You know, for freehand sketching, I'll probably, you know, imagine a light source on one side of her. You know, if it's coming from the right, maybe I'll shade more on the left, stuff like that. Now I was just working with I threw down a few more fine tipped black lines that were really opaque with my brush tip pen. Now I'm back to my watercolor and I'm adding more shadow. Usually when there's 2 legs, if one is in the front and one is in the back, it's that back leg that I'll usually actually shade the whole back leg so that it really falls back in space. It's a lot of fun to do that because it creates a lot of depth on the page, and shading is really about depth in 3D. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, or if you got any tips that like shed light on the subject for you, please let me know in the comments below. Subscribe if you'd like to know more, get more lessons from me. You can also catch me at www.fashionillustrationtribe.com for courses and more. Have a great day.